In this lesson, we're going to go over point and slope. Specifically, we'll learn first about the coordinate plane. We'll learn to identify and graph points on the coordinate plane. We'll understand and find slope of a line, and we'll apply point and slope to application problems. So first thing is the coordinate plane. So we have the coordinate plane, which is made up by the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay. The spot where the two axes cross is called the origin, and it's located, we'll talk about the ordered pair in a minute, at 0, 0. So as I go in the positive direction, you can think of the x-axis almost like a number line, where this point in the middle is 0. So as you go to the right, our numbers get positive, and it's assumed to be 1 for each line unless you're given a different scale, and then we get negative. So for instance, this would be, and let me see if I can zoom it in, 1, 2, 3, and so on. This would be -1, -2, -3, and so on. Same for the y-axis, but you can think of it as a vertical number line. So as we go up from 0, we have 1, 2, 3, and so on, -1. Negative numbers are really hard to draw on here because but you get the idea. Okay. So essentially with our coordinate plane, this is called quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And you don't necessarily have to know those. But in quadrant 1, x and y are both positive. So x is positive and y is positive. In quadrant 2, x is negative, y is positive. Oops. In quadrant 3, both x and y are negative, and in quadrant 4, x is positive and y is negative. So what's the coordinate plane used for? It's used to plot points, graph lines, or graph other things that can be helpful in solving various types of application problems. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here is ordered pairs and plotting points. Something that looks like this, parentheses, number, comma, another number, close parentheses, for the purposes of this lesson is an ordered pair. And what an ordered pair is a location on the coordinate plane. When you plot points, x tells us how far from the origin to move left or right, and y tells us how far to move up or down. So for instance, if we were asked to plot 5, -3, get a different color. So 5 is our x value and -3 is the y value. So we would start at the origin, which is the ordered pair there is 0, 0. So x is 0 and y is 0. To plot 5, -3, we're going to go 5 in the positive x direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's going to meet at -3 in the y direction. 1, 2, 3. So our point would be here. It's 5 to the right and 3 down. Okay. And we're going to practice this a little bit more, but I just wanted to take a slide to introduce you to the coordinate plane and plotting some points. Okay. So in example 1, we'll plot the following points. And again, for each line on here, assume that the scale is 1. So A is -2, 4. So X is -2. That's the horizontal distance from the origin. And Y is 4. And so for this problem, we go over 2, -1, 2, 3, 4. And so here is point A. It's -2, 4 in the Y direction. Point B is 3 in the positive x direction and -5 in the y direction. So 1, 2, 3. So start at the origin, move 3 over, and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Here's point B. Get another color. Point C is -4, -1. So both x and y are negative here, so we should end up in quadrant 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 1, point C. Point D is 5, 6, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the positive x direction, and then we'll go up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Point D. E is 0, 5, so when x is 0, that means you have no horizontal change. This point is going to be on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, x is equal to 0, and on the x-axis, y is equal to 0. So for point E, we don't change our horizontal direction, left or right. So we're going to start at the origin and just go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me get a point there. So here's point E. None in the x direction, 5 positive in the y direction. And same thing with f of negative 3 comma 0. So we're only moving left or right, in this case left, because that 3 is negative, and then we have no vertical change. So 1, 2, 3, here's point F. Okay. Next up, going the other way around, stating the coordinate of each point. So we'll start with point A. So point A is located here on the coordinate plane. And to get to point A, we always count from the origin how far over, left or right, and that'll be our x value, and then how far up or down, and that'll be the y value. Okay, so you can look at it a couple different ways. So here's point A. So to get to A, I have to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's negative because I went to the left. Also, there's a negative 5 there as a marker. And then I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the y direction. So that point is negative 6 comma 7. It's really important that there's parentheses around the ordered pair. That's a notation issue. We need those to be there. Okay. Point B. So B is on the y-axis, so there's no left or right going on here. So we have 0, and then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So the y is positive. Point C. So we count. We're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is our x coordinate. And then we go down 1, 2, 3. So negative 3 because we went down in the vertical direction. Okay, point D, 1, 2, 3, and then we go up 2. So this point is 3, comma 2. Point E is also on the y-axis, so our x is going to be 0. Notice it lines up with 0 there. And we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, so negative 4. Okay. And then point F, where's point F? Oh, I see. Okay, so point F, so we go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we go up 3. So we went left 6, so negative 6, up 3. So our y value is positive 3. So when it comes to the coordinate plane, you could be asked to graph points or identify certain points. Okay. Slope. So slope has to do with the steepness of a line, so how steep it is. You may have also heard of it as rise over run, or what I like to think of as fall and crawl. So from one point to the next, okay, so from one point to the next, it tells us how far up and over to go or how far down and over to get to the next point. So in this case, the slope we would go up 2 over 1. So we would rise 2 and run 1. So it's the vertical change between 2 points divided by the horizontal change between 2 points. Or another way you might have heard it is change in y divided by change in x, but we'll practice it. Okay. So find the slope of the line shown on the graph. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to emphasize a couple of points here. Okay, these would be given to you. So when you're asked to find the slope, we find out how far up we have to go to get to the next point and how far over we have to go. So I would just recommend counting 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we went up 4 and we're going to go over 2 to the right 2. Okay, so our slope, or what you might see notated as m, would be 4 over 2, which is the same as 2 over 1, which is the same as 2. I don't know how picky the software is. It might have you simplify, but I'm okay with either of those. Okay? So in this case, we went up 4 over 2 to get to the next point. Example 2, find the slope of the line shown on the graph. So I'm going to identify a couple of points here for us. Let's do this one and this one. Okay, so in this case, to get from one point to the next, we have to step down 1. So down 1, and then we go over 1, 2, 3, over 3. So in this case, our slope, we had to go down 1, so that means negative. If we're going down, we're going in the negative direction, and we ran to the right. Okay, so over 3. So this first one is an example of rise over run. Okay, how far up, how far over. The second example is what I like to say, fall and crawl. Okay, so you have to go down and go over to the right. Next, find the slope of the line shown on the graph. So any 2 points here will do. But notice, to get from one point to another, I don't have to go up at all. There's no vertical change here. So my slope, when I start building it, there's no vertical change. So it's 0 over let's say I pick this point here, 1, 2, 3, 0 over 3. And if you plug this in your calculator, 0 divided by any number is just 0. So a flat line or a horizontal line is an example of a line with a slope of 0. Next, find the slope of the line shown on the graph. So again, we can pick a couple of points here. So to get from one point to the next, we have to go up 1. So that's our rise, is 1. And we don't have to move at all in the horizontal direction. So we need to go over 0 spaces. 1 over 0 is undefined. And if you try to put it in your calculator, it'll give you an error. Divide by 0, error. So those are some examples of identifying the slope from the graph. In the next video, we'll talk about using it from two ordered pairs given.